I'm really proud to introduce Jackie Grant. She's going to talk about bats on Grand Staircase National Monument. So this is something that I've been really interested in, and it's always a part of some of my natural history tours. So always finding out more about our bats out on the National Monument is a pretty amazing thing. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different than the other presentations that we've had today, in part because of who I am. So we're going to talk about some introductions, who I am, and then a little bit of information about my organization, Grand Staircase Escalante Partners, or GSEP for short. We'll talk about bat evolution and biology, and some of the bat species on the monument, but at a really high level. And the way we're going to do this is through interspersed trivia. Would it be better if I stood over there?
If that would be okay, yeah.
I can stand over here. All right. Okay. And there will be time for questions. And I did bring my bat detector. So if people want to see that maybe during lunch, because there's all the food and it's just me between you and that pile of food, we can do a bat demonstration. Okay. So who am I? Brace yourself. This is a lot. I'm all these things. I'm not going to read them all to you. I've been through every single part of the academic system, from adjunct to lecturer, professor to full professor, and I have degrees from Texas A&M, Cornell University. I studied rhinos, I studied caterpillars. I was a Smith Fellow, which is a conservation science postdoc fellowship that you do after you get your PhD and whatever other degrees you have. I taught at Michigan Tech, I taught at Penn State. I finally ended up at Southern Utah University in Cedar City in 2011, and my crew is back there. So I have worked with all of these different agencies and tribal groups and others that are not listed here. In 2023, I went to New Zealand to study the intersection between indigenous and Western perspectives on seed banking from plants and looking at native plants and Maori perspectives. That changed my whole worldview, and I was lucky enough to be able to leave academics and join Grand Staircase Escalante Partners as their executive director in 2024. Okay, so that's my life history there. What is GSEP, or Grand Staircase Escalante Partners? We are a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, which means we're limited in the amount of lobbying that we can do, but we can do some. And our mission is to honor the past and safeguard the future of Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument and its connected landscapes and watersheds. So we work well beyond the boundaries of Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. And our approach is science, conservation, and education. Okay, what is a Friends group? Because the monument is a BLM-administered national monument, not National Park Service. We are officially the Friends group of the BLM's National Monument here. And for the BLM, of course, has a legal definition of what this is: a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization managed and formed by citizen volunteers and paid staff. They usually start out as volunteer run, but then as they evolve over time, we've been in existence for 20 years, turn into a group with paid staff, because people need to eat, right? We assist and support the purposes and objectives of the BLM, whatever it is, their site, a facility, or a program. We do all three, but we primarily focus on the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument and all the different groups. There are over 80 different groups now that are Friends groups for BLM administered sites. They're all different sizes and structures, right? Some have one person in them. Others have 50 people in them. We currently have 9 employees in our group. Okay, what do? We fundraise. We do stewardship. My crew back there. Conservation, education. We build relationships with tribes, and we do research and foster science on the monument. Okay, now we can talk about bats. How many bat species can be found in the state of Utah? Take a minute, think about that. Oh, we actually have a volunteer. How many bat species do we have? See the answer? 18 species. We have 18 species of bat in the state of Utah. Every single one of them at some point or another has been found within the boundaries of the monument. Okay, that doesn't mean that every time you go out you're going to find all 18. It just depends on the weather patterns of that particular year. It depends on the bats' migration patterns. Not all of them live in the monument. They move up and down throughout their range, which can be all the way down in Mexico and all the way up to Canada. So you're not going to see all the bats all the time. But we have detected all 18 species on the monument. Okay, here's our next question. And this one, take a look at this bat. Why do bats have such wrinkly ears and sometimes even their noses? Okay, in the back again.
Is it D?
It is D, to manipulate sound. So let's take a minute here, and I'm just going to keep talking. While I talk, I want you to take your ears and kind of squish them together. And what you'll notice is that the sound of my voice now sounds different to you because you're squishing your ears together. You can let one go. The sound of my voice now changes. You can let them both go. My voice has changed again to you. The reason is because, like bats, humans can do a minimal amount of echolocation. You have wrinkles in your ears. Look at your neighbor's ears, right? That's your pinny. And this part right here that some people pinch, this is the tragus. So this tragus, as it's modified, changes how sound waves come into the ear and turn around the different structures of the ear and then go into your ear canal and are interpreted by your brain, and even better with the bat's brain. Some bats are mouth shouters, and they shout, and we'll see a picture of this later. They shout to echolocate. Other bats are nasal shouters. And I can't even imitate how they do it, but they shout through their nose. And when they shout through their nose, it intensifies the cone of sound that is projected forward that they use to detect their environment. Okay, so excellent.
Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I know, like with our ears, they're fixed, and to kind of locate and position, a lot of times we have to rotate our head, but like on a coyote, they can just stand there and rotate their ears to kind of GPS locate things. What about bats? Do their ears move or modulate at all, or is it just more of the...
It depends on the bat species. So the question was, can bats move their ears around? Bats can move their ears around. But they rely often more on the wrinkles in the ears and the wrinkles in their faces, if they are a wrinkly-faced bat, to manipulate that sound. Bats are also really small, so they can manipulate their whole body to change and follow the sound. Cool. So here's our bat. You can see his mouth is open. That bat is shouting. Bats shout so loudly and so intensely that they actually have a muscle in their head, in their ear, that this is my eardrum. If sound that is too loud hits my eardrum, broken. Now I'm deaf in my ear. Bats have a muscle that causes the eardrum to collapse. So when they shout, and they don't control this themselves, right? It's like your heart beating. You don't control your heart beating. A bat does not control the stiffness of its eardrum. So it shouts, the eardrum relaxes, so it doesn't deafen itself. And then it pops back up so it can hear the sound coming back, which is at a much lower frequency than the shout that the bat used initially to detect its prey and its environment. So here on this figure, you can see the bats shouting in blue. The lines are a little bit thicker. The moth here, the prey, the sound hits the moth and bounces back much more quietly to the bat. And this shouting and the detection with the ears and the face and all the things helps the bat determine where the moth is, what kind of insect it is, where it's going, how fast it's flying, how big it is, and how good of a meal it might be. All of that through a single shout. So the bat's flying like this and deafening itself at the same time. Okay, we're going to talk about the three sections of the monument because they will influence a little bit where we're going to find the different bats. So in the western part, shown in blue on this particular map of the monument, that is the grand staircase. All the geologic features, right? Lots of diversity in habitat, and we'll show a picture of that in a minute. The Kuiperowitz Plateau in the central is going to be shown in yellow here, and then the Escalante Canyons on the east side of the monument. So depending on where you work and tour, you might see a different suite of bats in that particular environment. So our grand staircase section goes from the Pink Cliffs, the Clarion Formation, up by Bryce Canyon, all the way down, well, all the way down to the Grand Canyon, technically, but I'm ending it here in the Chinle Formation, down on the south side of the monument. What we're going to see here is that these areas, so this is a dry stream bed for Henderson Creek and Henderson Canyon, those are hugely important to bats because they use those dry seasonal stream beds as highways. That is a bat highway. So oftentimes you will see different extractive industries say there's no water in there, or there's only water in there for like 1 month of the year. We don't need to protect it. This is a bat highway. It's hugely important to bats as they navigate throughout the monument through these canyon areas. Down in this part of the monument, we're not going to find as many bats, but they will migrate through, and you may detect them if you're using an acoustic detector, which I will show you later. The Kuiperowitz section, a little bit more sparse. This section is going to have bats flying through as they migrate somewhere else. However, this is the blues over here, and if there are some ponderosa pines are a really good roosting site for bats because they're so small they can slip under the bark and sleep there at night. Down in this part, the bats are going to be found all up in here in the canyons and the crevices. The tiniest rock crevice will make a good roosting site for some of our bat species. And the Escalante Canyons, this is going to be the place where we're going to see a lot of bat diversity. We've got all this water, right? We've got flyways and canyons. The water attracts the insects. The insects are important for the bats to eat. There are some fruit-feeding bats, but none in Utah. They're all south of here. That may change, right, as the weather patterns shift and we get different types of cactus growing up here. But for now, our bats in Utah all eat insects of different varieties. Okay, here's our next question. The bats use echolocation to visualize their environment. Who else does?
All of them.
All of them, right. All of these things. There are some frogs that can use echolocation. Humans. If you go online, there's a video of a guy who was born without eyes, and he taught himself to echolocating by tongue clicking. So let's all try that. The stronger your tongue, the better the click, the more higher frequencies you're producing off the room, and some people can actually train themselves to navigate, like he rides a bike by tongue clicking. So he can't avoid potholes like little ones, but he can avoid cars on the road through tongue clicking as he rides his bicycle. Toothed whales, right, these are some of the big whales like dolphins, porpoises, those all belong in the toothed whale family. They send their echolocation through water, so they need even more power and strength when they send out their signals. Okay, what part of the bat forms its wing? So if we look at this picture of the bat, what part? Yeah, Nate's got it. It's the hand. It's the hand. So what part? There's the big hints. So if we look here, this is the bat's upper arm. So this is the bat's upper arm right here, super short. If we were to fly with a bat's anatomy, our upper arms would be about 1/3 of the size. We need this to be really strong to fly as a mammal. And then the forearm is this section here. So your radius and your ulna, the little tiny thumb is that right there. And then the wing is all the finger bones. So these are all just the fingers of the bat. And this word up here, chiropatagium. Patagium is just a skin flap. Chiro means your hand, right? If you've been to the chiropractor, he uses his hand or she uses her hand. A chiropatagium is skin between fingers. As you are developing as an embryo, when you're an embryo, your fingers are all connected with skin. And there's a gene that turns on that causes programmed cell death so your fingers can come apart. So occasionally some humans are born with webbed fingers, maybe webbed toes. It's because that gene did not turn on fully. And in a bat doesn't want that gene to turn on at all because it wants this skin between its fingers so that it can fly. The tragus, again, here you can see on this bat, remember this is your tragus, this little bit right here on your ear. In a bat, they can be very enlarged and differently shaped to help the bat process sound. The thumb, again, here, so wrist, thumb, it's all smushed together. The bat uses its wings to change direction, and that thumb and those wrists, or the radius and the ulna and the forearm, help the bat turn and move through the air really fast and really quickly. Another thing I'd like to point out in this bat, this particular species has a uropatagium, so like your urinary tract, and it's a skin flap down here. There's the tail, there are the two hind feet, which are really small in a bat. And this uropatagium can be used for navigation in some bat species, but other bat species fly up to spider webs and they take that flap of skin in their tail and they scoop the spider out of the net to catch it. So there are some bats that specialize on spiders and not just flying insects. Okay, we're going to talk about evolution for a minute. I was a biology professor, so I have to talk about these things. I want you to take a look at this figure, which is essentially a family tree of mammals that have placentas, and find the one that is most closely resembling the human lineage. Okay, our gorilla, right? So this group right here, we can follow this down. We see there's a little point there. There was a split between all of these mammals and all of these mammals down here in blue. These names all mean something. So this one means, well, we'll start over here. Humans are in this group. Archonta means the true rulers, because you know how humans are. So the true rulers are in there. And then our closest living relatives for humans are actually squirrels. Glires are the squirrels. So Archontoglires means true rulers and the squirrels. Bats, which many people think, oh, bats must be really closely related to mice. We've got to go all the way back down the tree to the northern mammals. So Boreo means northern, Eutheria means true mammals. Then we have to go to some place called Laurasia, which if you follow geology and the movement of tectonic plates, there was a place called Laurasia for a while. All the mammals that evolved in Laurasia are in this whole lineage. Scrotifera is animals that have scrotums. We all have scrotums up here, but this whole group, the ones in blue have scrotums. The shrews do not. So that's why they decided to call this whole entire branch the Scrotifera. So yes, bats have scrotums. And the nearest closest relative to a bat is going to be the last ancestor of what made camels and rhinos, pangolins, and dogs and cats and raccoons. We don't really know what this creature was here, but we know it had a scrotum. Okay. Oh, why do bats glow under UV light? This is a recent discovery. Back in the back again.
As soon as I raised my hand, I was like, I don't actually know this one. I would just guess maybe D.
Maybe D. Okay, so this is a bat. This is not a Utah bat. They have shown a UV light. So who's used UV lights to look for scorpions? Yeah, so that same light, if you shine it at a bat, not all of them, some of them glow green under that ultraviolet light. The answer is, nobody knows. I know.
Because they're all downwinders, is that why?
This original study was bats on the East Coast, so they probably had their own nuclear problems over there, but not downwinders the way that we are over here. I mean, we do know in a way the bat has a protein in its skin, right? So there are different explanations as to why something happens. And physiologically, there's a protein in the bat's skin. When the protein interacts with ultraviolet light, it glows. But why is that important for the bat? Nobody knows yet, because they did the initial study with dead bats in a museum collection. They're now starting to look at living bats to think about why would a bat glow under ultraviolet light. So if you had known, I would have been really impressed. Okay, more evolution. Originally, we have multiple types of bats, right? Bats are all over the whole world. We have these Megachiroptera, so that just means big bats, right? Big hand wings. And they're in the family called Pteropodidae. So these are like your flying foxes, your bats that have a 6-foot-long wingspan and live in Malaysia and Indonesia. We don't have any of those here. So they said, these bats are so big and so different and they fly during the day, we need to put them in their own group. And all the other bats are little, like the size of your hand. So we'll put them over here and we'll call them Microchiroptera. However, when people started looking at the actual genetic structure, right, the DNA sequence of these bats, they found that these big bats, they were actually pretty closely related to this set, the Rhinolophoidea, smaller bats. And then these bats over here were their own separate evolutionary lineage of bat. Sometimes scientists like to make jokes, so they called this the yin Pterochiroptera and the yang Ochiroptera. So anyway, nerdy bat stuff. In Utah, we just have two families of bats represented, the Vespertilionidae and the Molosidae. And most of our bats are in this vesper or evening bat group. Most bats, except for the pteropodids, are evening bats. I don't know why these got a special call out as the evening bat group. But here's a question for you, given what we just learned. What are the features of this bat that tell us it's not from Utah? Okay, so we've got something about its wings. I heard about its nose.
I'll say eyes, just 3 different.
Eyes, and another trick question. Yeah, so let's go back to that picture. This is a flying fox bat. This is one of the big bats. Big eyes, flies during the day. Our other bats, the ones we have in Utah, have teeny tiny eyes. They can still see, but they really only use them at dusk and dawn. Our diurnal, daytime bats, have big eyes so that they can look for fruit. These are fruit-eating bats. The nose is very simple, and that's because it's not using echolocation. These are tongue-clicking bats. So these bats echolocate the way that a human would echolocate, except they're better at it, right? Ears, really small ears, not a lot of wrinkles in those ears. And someone mentioned the wings. They have bigger claw tips. So again, that's that thumb of the bat. These bats fly long distances to find fruit, which doesn't try to run away from them. So they don't have to maneuver the way our little insect hunting bats do. Okay, all right. How much does a Utah bat, so these are our vespers and our molossid bats, how much do they weigh relative to a penny? C, about 20 pennies worth. We've got a B, 10 pennies worth.
Isn't it this, and I don't know how to correlate this, the same weight of a nickel? Is that like...
About 3 pennies. So about, it depends on the bat. So maybe a nickel could be a pretty good one. If you're in the field and someone says, how much does a bat weigh? Or give everybody a nickel, because that's easier than carrying around 30 pennies. And that's how much a bat weighs. So they look like they should weigh a lot more, right? But a bat hardly weighs anything at all. And a penny depends on when it was minted. If it's a zinc penny, it's a little bit lighter. If it's a copper penny before 1983, it's a little bit heavier. And scientists argue about these types of things. But for you guys, it's not going to matter, right? Okay.
What's a penny?
Yeah, exactly. They're illegal now or something. Okay, Utah bats again belong to 2 families, the molosids, which are free-tailed bats. So this bat does have a little bit of a, does anyone remember the word?
Scrotum sac.
the scrotum sac is extra. This bat would have more than that if it was a boy. The Europatagium, yeah. So this is a Brazilian free-tailed bat, and these are the bats that they migrate and they also roost in the millions. So they need big cave systems. They're not going to be down like by Lake Powell where it's all flat, like the Smoky Mountains area. Yeah, you're probably not going to find them there unless they're just moving through. Okay, there are 100 species in this family worldwide. Molossus was a Greek figure that looked like a big giant mean bulldog. And so they call these often the bulldog bats because of how their face looks. Pretty simple nose. More of their wrinkles are going to be found in their ears. 2 species here, Nyctinomops macrotus, and I can't remember the common name because that's what a nerd I am, but the Pteridata brasiliensis is the Brazilian free-tailed bat. This one right there is going to be more commonly encountered than Nyctinomops will be. These bats, yep.
Is Nyctinomops a colonial bat, or is it individual?
It's also a colonial bat. Mm-hmm. The molosids, 10,000 feet. So they go up at night, they are looking for bugs really, really high. But a lot of our moths, our aquatic insects, when they hatch, will also often go really, really high. So 10,000 feet is where they are up looking for their prey items. And in an evening, they can take a 100-mile trip, this particular species. So you can see, right, how strong looking that forearm is. This is their upper arm right there, little tiny thing, really there more for leverage. And then this is going to be the strength of their flight muscles, is going to be coming here off the forearm, and then their long fingers. This bat has its fingers tucked up underneath it. Okay, and thousands to millions, depending on where they're roosting. Okay, our other type of bat, the Vespertilionidae, the evening bats. These are more common. There are 400 species worldwide, and in Utah we have about 16 species. Occasionally, because we're down here near the Arizona border, we'll get an Arizona species. We'll just get, caught by the wind or lost or whatever. But living in Utah on a regular basis, 16 species of Vesper bats. These have a simpler nose, so you can see there's not all those crazy wrinkles that we saw on the other bat at the beginning. That's probably a rhinolophoid bat. Our South American bats have more complicated faces because they have a more constant environment and a bigger prey base. Okay, these can be solitary, so we have canyon bats, roost in canyons by themselves. We have little brown bats or little brown myotis. They will roost with thousands of other bats, and that makes them susceptible to diseases like white nose syndrome. These bats only forage in the 10 to hundreds of foot range. So if you're going to go out with a client, unless you happen to be where the bats are coming out of a roost for the molluskids, you're probably going to be hearing or seeing or detecting a Vespertilionid bat, because they're in that range 10 to hundreds of feet where you're actually going to see them. Some people can hear them. As you get older, you lose more and more of your higher frequency range, and you're less and less able to hear the bats at night.
So these bats are the ones that you're most likely to hear?
These are the ones you're most likely to see and hear. Down at the Escalante River Trail, tons of bats here. But also here in Kanab at the library, I did a demonstration in October, and we had dozens of bats, probably 4 or 5 different species. Yeah. Okay, how do we manage for bats on the monument? Bats like open forests. They don't like those super thick juniper forests because those are difficult for them to get around. So things like wildfires can be good for a bat in limited numbers, right? We don't want humongous wildfires, but this has cleared out the forest, the Deer Springs fire in 2024. The way that land managers can get after this is through prescribed fire and hand thinning. Bats need their roosting locations. So if we go in after a fire and we take down all the standing dead trees, we're going to remove some bat habitat. They like caves, they like rock crevices, they like tree bark of living trees in old growth forests, which is why it's really important to protect our old growth forests. Anything that helps improve insect habitat, especially aquatic insects. So guzzlers, like we might not be a fan of a guzzler, which is a watering device for cattle and wildlife. It will actually help bats as well. Light pollution, like Autumn talked about, it's important for us as humans. It is also important for bats not to have too much light pollution in the sky because they are not blind. They can see. And the more light pollution you have, the more it's going to impact your native insect population, which in turn is going to cause problems with your bat populations. Old mines turn out to be really important bat habitat, but also dangerous for humans because humans like to go, what's in there? And then somebody falls down and gets hurt or dies. The old practice was they would just wall off the entire mine and all the bats inside would die, but nowadays they put big, gigantic bars on the old mines. So if you come across an old mine and you see those big bars, it is there for bat protection and to keep humans from doing stupid things. Okay, dry washes like we talked about earlier, right? When you have that wash, it is a highway for a bat to fly somewhere as it's looking for prey. Pinyons and junipers can also be really important for bats as roosting habitat. Okay, surveying for bats. So harp traps is this thing down here. There are a bunch of strings and the bat flies into the string, falls down into the bag, and then the biologist, who has to have rabies shots and a permit and good gloves, can pull the bat out and identify the species, take some samples if they're doing a research project. Mist nets is what we're seeing here in the middle. Same thing, you need a permit, you need to have your gloves, you need to have your rabies shot. And it's really a pain to get a bat out of a mist net. That's why people tend to use harp nets if they can, but the mist net is very effective. It's just really hard to get bats out of there. As guides, you can use this third method, the acoustic detection. So I brought one here. These do cost now about $300 each, but if you were going to, say, develop a whole series of tours for nighttime activities like photography, detecting bats, doing insect surveys with a black light, it might be worth having one of these because you can hook this up to a large iPad and it'll show you the translated sound of the bat, which is in ultrasonic frequency that we cannot hear. It'll show you a picture of that frequency, that sound, and then it'll actually show you a little picture of the bat and tell you which species it is. So these are super cool to have around, and I think Nate's actually building some of his own.
Yeah, you can actually build your own bat voice. Like, it just makes it, you hook it up to your pod, and you can hear the sound of the bats. And they have like these home build kits. They're really cool. They're fun. So.
Yeah, so if you just want to hear, they still cost a bunch to build them?
No, they're like, yeah, like $40.
Oh yeah, $40 instead of $300. But this one you get to see a picture and the bat always looks really cute.
You don't know which bat it is, you don't know what it's saying.
Yeah. Okay, so these are the main ways that we scientists survey for bats, and people are now developing whole systems where you can just deploy a bat detector on its own and come back every few months and just download the data. Here are all the bats that were at your site for this 3-month-long period. Okay, we're getting towards the end. What do we call the recording of the bats shouting? C, the spectrogram, yeah. So on the top, this is what the output of the bat detector device looks like, and they hook up to your phone or an iPad, like I said. The top is telling us the strength of the call. How loud is the bat shouting? Down here, we're looking at the frequency, so this tells us the species of the bat. Each one of these little pulses runs us through the frequency of sound, so how high-pitched or low-pitched it is, and there's a little bit of an intensity measurement here as well. And this shape is linked to an individual species. Whole species groups have their own way that they shout, and we can visualize this and then say what kind of bat we have flying.
Can you tell if it's a nasal shout or
Well, we don't have any nasal shouters here, and you would be able to tell a nasal shouter from a mouth shouter because they're different species and the shape would be different. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's it. Happy to take questions.
do you want to do questions?
We can do questions while people eat lunch.
Okay. Yes, no.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know Niles Brown?
I do not.
He's an international.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right.
So, Jackie will be around to ask any questions. We got lunch here.